I just finished my first scratch build, a Redwood, BURL, and walnut semi-hollow Telecaster. Here's how it went. To start off, I shaped the walnut using MDF templates I created from plans I downloaded from the internet. I drilled out the hollow portions of the guitar using my drill press and a Forstner bit, which ended up taking a considerable amount of time. With the body hollowed out, I next attached the redwood top to the walnut base. I trimmed the redwood using my router and a pattern bit. I then cut out the routes for the P-90 pickups. This was both the first time I built a neck and also the first time using roasted maple. I routed out the truss rod channel using my router table, which made for a nice and clean channel. It really is a beautiful piece of figured wood. Surprisingly, the mill considered this to be a second, and so it was discounted accordingly. The Indian rosewood fretboard was then glued to the neck. The plans I downloaded had the scale fender headstock, but as I was cutting, I ended up not exactly following the line. It turned out better looking in my mind. I did one strip of black binding around the seam between the redwood and the walnut, using acetone to fuse it. This is only the third time I've done binding, and it came out pretty well. I did have a few spots where there needed a touch-up, which I filled with melted binding and acetone. Shaping the headstock was next. I drilled out the tuner holes partially to use as marks, then sanded in the drop-down at the fretboard. Then I moved to the bandsaw to cut the proper thickness. Unfortunately, I ended up burning the headstock pretty badly, so it ended up being a character mark in the final guitar. Next was the remaining body fabrication, cutting out the hole for the control plate and drilling the end pin jack. I carved the neck pocket using chisels, mostly for practice. This was the first time seeing the body and the neck together as one. I wasn't sure if I was going to do an F-hole, and then my wife was like, it definitely needs an F-hole. And she was absolutely right. Usually you would decide something like this before you glue the top to the body, but since I did it, I carved out the F-hole from the top carefully using some sharp chisels. This step was an unfortunate one, but pretty common for beginners. When making the neck pocket, I cracked a part of the top off, as redwood is pretty soft. So I had to splice in a piece of the leftover burl, and on final finishing it's not really that noticeable. Next, it was time to add a little TRU-OIL and watch the figure come out. Both the redwood and the walnut came alive in just a few coats, though I would come back later and keep messing with it for far too long. Carving the neck was pretty easy using a Shinto rasp. I even let my son take a few passes to get the feeling. The hardest parts were definitely the heel and the headstock, but then they still turned out alright in the end. What didn't turn out so well was letting a pirate into the shop to sell my own sandpaper back to me. I should have added the neck dots before I carved the neck, but even with freehand drilling they turned out pretty well. With the dots in, I added just 2 light coats of TRU-OIL to pop the grain on the neck while still retaining the bare wood feel. Installing the bone nut and the tuners was next. The biggest issue I ran into was unintentionally making the headstock too thin. So when I tightened down the bushings, there were still threads to go. I ended up solving this using a fine-tooth hacksaw to cut a few millimeters from the end of the bushings, and the problem was solved. Next, I enlisted the help of my wife to design a little branding for this guitar, adding a headstock decal and a serial number on the back. This was done using a Cricut vinyl cutting machine, and it looks really sharp. After a bit of polishing in the TRU-OIL, it was time to install the bridge, using my laser gadget to help me ensure everything was in line. Pickups and electronics were next, and then there was nothing left but to add some strings. And that was it. My first scratch build was complete. I added it to the trophy wall for the other guitars I partially built. In another video, I'll do a sound review of the P-90 pickups, which sound fantastic. In the meantime, please like this video and subscribe to get notified of future videos. Thanks for watching.